Welcome back, supply chain innovators, planning pioneers, and optimization enthusiasts. Joe Davis here, your friendly neighborhood podcast host with another episode of Gains On, the podcast where we explore the future of supply chain strategy, planning, and design, powered as always by the brilliant minds at Gains. Today, we're taking a look inside one of the most complex and wide-ranging supply chains in retail. Home Depot's network touches nearly every corner of the industry. Rapid deployment replenishment, direct-to-home fulfillment, extensive reverse logistics, and more. Joining me is Mosher from the Home Depot's Network Design and Data Science organization. Aaron and his team rely on flexibility, experimentation, and long horizon modeling to support both DIY shoppers and their pro customers, two groups with very different expectations, but equally high standards. We'll learn why flexibility is essential in a competitive retail landscape, how Home Depot uses Gains to test sensitivities and build alternative futures, and how the team's scientific approach helps leaders make confident decisions even when the long-term outlook is uncertain. Ready to dive in? Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. You are, the data scientist manager, is that right?
I lead the data science arm of the network strategy team at the Home Depot.
So what kind of things do you do there as the head of that department?
So the network strategy team, our mission is basically to help empower our leaders with kind of those big ticket investments we need to keep our Home Depot supply chain truly cutting edge. So that can mean new buildings of all of the different platforms that we manage. It could also mean major investments inside those buildings, i.e. new robotics, new automation, conveyors, things of that nature. It could also mean purely software of how do we take existing buildings, existing platforms, but allow them to connect together in a way that they haven't connected before.
Right.
Either to enable replenishment or fulfillment or just anything that we think could drive some savings.
Excellent. So it seems like you guys are keeping a constant eye on the supply chain and where you can improve, that idea of continuous improvement. Is that
100%? I think, and that's really both a like to do and a must do. I think the retail space is incredibly competitive.
Absolutely.
And Home Depot wants to be a leader in that retail space. And you can't be a leader by just kind of keeping your head down and following other people.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think Home Depot is a brand that a lot of people are familiar with. But what is something that you think would be surprising to people to learn about Home Depot's supply chain? Something that's unique to your business?
I think the first thing right off the bat is just how diverse it is. Like if you think of a lot of other supply chains, Home Depot probably has a piece of it. Like grocery stores pioneered a lot of that rapid deployment, kind of get product to stores quickly, and Home Depot 100% has that.
Yeah.
A lot of people may think of, Amazon fulfillment, shipping directly to your house, and Home Depot has that. Home Depot also has a very robust reverse logistics center of getting it back and kind of making sure we either dispose of it efficiently or occasionally get some returns back to the vendors. And another I would want to highlight would be our flatbed distribution center. So this is a little bit unique to Home Depot, or at least the kind of building materials space. It's how do you move product like lumber and concrete?
Right.
Things that, you have to use a forklift to move and you have to use a flatbed trailer to deliver.
Right.
And what's really neat about that platform is it just smells wonderful. It all smells like, like lumber, like the lumber on Depot is that as like hundreds of thousands of square feet. But also it's really neat because it's a dual purpose kind of full service building. Not only did it start life as, a store replenishment platform, keeping that lumber aisle in stock, it's also expanded to a really great tool for our pro customers, because now not only can we ship to a store, we can load that flatbed with highly skilled associates and deliver it in job lot quantities to your job.
Right to a work site. Yeah.
And it has all of those kind of one-stop shop for many of those building materials type needs. That you want. So you have these flatbed delivery trailers next to these, 48-foot flatbed trailers replenishing a store. And then it's like one big efficient platform. So,
well, it is two very distinct customers with two very distinct needs, right? And you have to serve both of those customers well. And, like you say, it's not a one size fits all model is not going to work for that. So I imagine that the needs of the pro customer are much different than the needs of sort of weekend warrior DIY customer.
Yes and no. Okay. I would say that our pro customers also shop in the store. So having a positive store experience is as important for your delivering service to the pros as it is to DIY.
Yeah.
And also, I think a lot of there are a lot of folks, DIY can mean a build it for me. It can also mean like, no, I've installed the deck. It took me 8 times longer than I needed. Right. Yeah, we've all been there, right?
So Home Depot adopted Gains pretty early on, and one of the things that Home Depot identified is a need for flexibility, and came to Gains for that reason. Can you tell me a little bit about why you needed flexibility in your supply chain?
So there's really 2 big reasons.
Yeah.
The first you already broached, which we have a whole data science team
Right.
supporting network design. And when you have that level of talent on the team, having some software that kind of gets out of the way and lets them be creative and kind of solve the problem they want to solve is great. And also, like, that's just what we have to be. The retail space is incredibly competitive. And our recent earning calls, our leaders emphasize that Home Depot is a growth company. We're a growth-minded company.
Yeah.
And one of the major areas we are expanding to is obviously growing that capability for pro customers. And as you mentioned, pro customers have a very high bar for service.
Right.
So that's pushing our buildings to be more creative, more efficient, and to offer more than they've ever done in the past, which means our models have to be able to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And concrete is slow and expensive. So the more you can test in that digital space, the more agile you can be and remain as a company.
So is that sort of what you're doing at Home Depot now? You're taking all this data, these data points, and you're kind of throwing them at the model and see where it breaks or see where it does well and try and replicate that? Or
So I think we start to be a little bit more intentional. We always start with what are the key questions we're trying to answer? What are we trying to do? And so we'll do a little bit of iteration to say, well, what factors matter?
Right.
But we'll try and design our models and our experiments to measure that.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important balance between, obviously you want to put a lot of things into a model because then you can see some really interesting emergent effects. Like if you predefine and say, okay, I'm gonna fix this in, I'm gonna test this, and then fix this, and then fix this, you miss when this thing impacts this. Or you can find something kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. So we love having that.
Right.
But on the flip side, we're planning 5 years out. We don't know anything 5 years out for sure. Like if we knew something for certain, as much as I love Home Depot, I don't think I would be working at Home Depot. I'd be God King of the Fed sounds more.
Is that official title, God King of the Fed?
If you could predict 5 years out, I think they'd make one.
I think you're probably right.
The Oracle of Delphi just, buried in Knoxville, Tennessee or something. I don't know. So with that, I think the other balance is being able to run just sensitivity. Like rather than trying to say, here is the answer, it's here is a likely answer given this set of scenarios, or here's where 2 scenarios shift. And I think that is an important translation of rather than saying, here's the business target, here's the network, it's the network shifts at this business target and this network's cheaper. So maybe we should try and.
I gotcha. Okay. So really it is just, there's really just testing the limits of what things can handle, just kind of getting in there and pressing on the different areas of the model with data to see where the shifts fall.
I think that's actually one of the key benefits we've noticed from Gains is that we can really have our data science team really lean into the science and do truly kind of open-ended research where we don't know the answer and we're just running experiments, testing hypotheses to say, well, what is the best way to run the network? What are the key factors driving this performance?
You're using Gains in some innovative ways. And you described it as sort of creating alternative futures, which I think is awesome. And so that you could create a network that operates the best, most of the time in an optimal way. Can you tell me about that?
For sure. So short of, being God Emperor of Dune and truly knowing the future, some small portion of that power is to list out different hypotheticals. And like, that's how you understand where that shift is. Like knowing exactly this one thread, where does that land? It's less important than knowing kind of, again, where that cliffs, where's the valley between the two, shifting sands of time.
Right.
So I think that's an important setup that we've done, is to build that sensitivity into our model.
Right.
I think this is a concept that we didn't create it. I think robust engineering is kind of a key topic in a lot of optimizations research forums. And I think Home Depot definitely being on that cutting edge and being willing and able to take those risks to really drive the industry forward. I think that's kind of where we're sitting as far as the problem.
Yes. Well, that's great. That Home Depot's is not only able to give you that sort of, but is willing to give you that kind of leverage to say, hey, we want this to be a success. We're going to give you the tools to do that. Now go tell us how to be successful.
I mean, there's always a little bit of carrot and stick here, right? Is there some of it is like, it's the freedom to be able to do it. It's also like, I think many retailers have seen the level of disruptions getting out of the pandemic. Like, I think many retailers felt that stick a little bit of like, it's always going to grow. It's always, why do we have so much inventory?
Right.
So I think it's a little bit of both. It's kind of demand planning or risk is no longer a hypothetical.
Right. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
There's going to be disruptions.
Well, everything's fine. Tariffs have zero impact on retail strategy.
And same.
Yeah, it's just
Everything's flat.
everything's great. It's fine, guys. It's fine.
So beyond the tariffs and all the other factors that are always changing, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of seasonality to your business as well. Not just like with, the inside and outside, but also if during storm season, you could see hurricane season, you could see a lot of, boost in need for building materials, and that type of thing. How do you cope with that seasonality?
So I think for us, it's a little bit interesting because when you're making a 5-year decision, you're not making a seasonal decision.
No.
You're making a decision for what will last over 15, 20 years.
Right.
So I think it's important to note kind of, are you sizing to Easter Sunday? Are you sizing to that peak?
Yeah.
Are you sizing in the middle? One thing that's really cool about Gains is it offers a lot of flexibility to make kind of a soft constraint.
Oh, okay.
Where rather than just saying my capacity is X,
Right.
you can say my capacity is cheap up to X, a
Okay.
little bit more expensive up to Y, and horribly expensive up to Z. And there is a hard physical limit at some point,
Yeah.
but you start throwing money at problems
Yeah.
well before you reach that physical limit.
Right. Well, I wonder in that, like, how do you find the balance of that? Do you say, sometimes say, I'm going to go for X, even though it's very expensive because there's a net gain somewhere else or or it evens out somewhere else?
I mean, I think that's kind of your mostly best most of the time. Like that's where you can let the model decide kind of what is your permanent long-term decision and what's a short-term decision.
Right.
The short-term decisions probably have a higher cost on them. And then by running multiple volumes, multiple scenarios, and then constraining it to make kind of one long-term decision across all those things, and then weighting the probabilities or weighting the cost, you can kind of have, essentially you're doing like an insurance premium.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's just, well, what is the like most likely cheapest?
Right.
Like, it's not like, oh, this magic like balance you're trying to predict it. It's just like, well, if I think this is what I believe about the distribution of problem, like my actuarial tables and whatever else, whatever data I have at hand.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's just, well, what is most likely to kind of get success in the long term?
Yeah, when we talk about flexibility, it's some of what, I think we talk about with Gains, and that flexibility is the flexibility to sort of have ranges as opposed to saying this is our number. And if our number is missed, we're a failure. If our number is hit, we're a great success, right? But having ranges like that, you can say, that you can plan for, because that's that shifting flexibility, I think, at least from my standpoint. What changed when Gains let your team shift from a will this solve to building a Home Depot specific predictors for, transport, labor, and that type of thing?
So I think, this is really like allowing our data science team to function as a science team.
Yeah.
And I think if you can think about it, the value of an optimization solver, the value of a network planning is really dependent on how good are your inputs. And how much value can you extract from your outputs?
Right.
So time you spend on the solver isn't really, it's necessary. Right. You have to have it solved, but it's not actually directly driving that value.
Yeah.
And so the less time you can spend babysitting the solver, the more you can invest that's directly driving that value. And so I think mechanically, it's just allowed us to revolutionize and really just consider a much broader scope of questions. It's also allowed us to speak at a much more truly strategic level. Like if you have to take a problem and kind of compartmentalize, like chunk it down, like what runs on a laptop, essentially.
Makes sense.
It means that you have to kind of make expert decisions, or you have to make alignment decisions. You have to say, my business target is X.
Right.
Where that business target is like getting all your leaders across those groups to align. So that just adds alignment discussions, and it really slows the process down so that you really can only deliver one answer.
Right.
Rather than by not having to babysit the solver, by being able to leverage kind of cloud compute power.
Right.
You can throw a lot more options, a lot more sensitivity into that problem, and then turn it around and say, hey, again, the network you can get shifts at this business target. So let's make that the target, because that's what's truly changes. Right. Like if you're really bad, then you're going to buy into so much space anyway. At a certain point, you're just like, well, I have all this space. I'll figure it out.
Right.
I think Home Depot, when I first joined, we started with the sync program, which is, rolling out that rapid distribution center. There's this concept of the river and the rocks, which is talking about inventory. If your inventory levels are high, you can hide a lot of rocks. There's a lot of problems you just don't need to worry about because you got the inventory to write it out. As soon as you start bleeding that inventory down, you're like, wait, why is this lead time varying by 3 weeks? Right. Why is this in spiking over here? And all of a sudden you have a lot more problems to deal with when that inventory is
It's a warm coat, as my boss likes to say. So you've said that you were able to use the data that you get to speak to leadership at Home Depot about the cost of a strategy whole in, right, for shorter and clearer recommendations. So what does that look like in practice?
So as I mentioned, kind of what it used to look like is just a lot of alignment discussions, whereas now it's a lot more of a kind of an agile, like, product conversation. We start with what are you wanting to do? What are kind of the concerns you have about this network? What are the key time deliverables that we have to answer? So we start with there. And then we're able to come back and, again, show that sensitivity. Rather than saying, align on this, here's the buildings, we can say, here's the cost before and after this target. And we can even highlight, hey, these are the targets that are driving you, right? You may be worried about inventory space, but if you have a speed to customer delay, maybe you're not worried about inventory space. You have to build a new building just to get to that customer at that point,
to hit the number,
to have some extra space there anyway. So
have you found that having that data and being able to speak in those ways with your leadership is improved decision speed?
I think so. I think it also just allows us to work better, and I think is actually closer kind of our role. Like, we are very much an internal consulting team, and a good consultant generally doesn't like tell you the answer and say, here's what it is. They say, here's what matters. Here's the information to empower you to make a good decision. So that as things change, as you learn more, as you take a national model and handing over to a real estate team that says, hey, I actually have to go build this thing now.
Right.
There are things that always changes. And I think having that sensitivity in that direction allows us to be more flexible. So does it make the first answer that much faster? Probably not. Does it make all the following answers and kind of that agile pivot to keep it valid? 100%.
So it really kind of helps you dial in and then small corrections from there.
And it also gives us more confidence that we've kind of explored more of the space rather than like before it was kind of a single shot in the dark. Is that the best shot in the dark? Maybe.
Can you talk about a time where you found like a tempting local savings or something, or you thought, oh, we're getting a really good price on this, or this works out to be really cheap. But then when you played that out in the scenario or in your model, when you played that all out, you ended up that these sort of cheap fix led to a long-term cost. Have you ever run into that?
So I think a interesting interplay on both directions where things can be easy to undervalue and overvalue. Is if you can think about your garage or your workshop. And there's a bit of a trade-off between upfront money or capital, labor, and space. If you stack everything, in boxes, you can free up a lot of space. But of course, that tool you need is always on the box. So you're going to spend some time moving boxes around, right? You can also spread things all out everywhere. And be able to find everything you want, like in that, kind of, it's totally, organized chaos, right? Out of sight. Where you walk is someone else's problem, right? Just, careful dance. Or you can spend, a bunch of money, having like really fancy shelving, which tries to cut a balance where, now you have more vertical space. You can kind of access things quickly, but also, have it kind of put away in a neat, accurately tidy organizational structure.
And there's a cost.
And there's an upfront cost to that storage. That same problem, I think, plays out in a distribution center where that custom shelving more and more could be automated storage and retrieval. Capital cost is now in the millions, rather than like a few thousand for a Husky check. Home Depot totally sells them if you're looking for some garage storage.
They're great. I have one. They're great.
Yeah.
So in business, you've got a lot of experts. And some of those experts use data, like yourself, and some of those experts use intuition or lead with their gut. Um, let's say there is value in both, I think. But for you, I mean, you've told me when we spoke previously that 80% of your decisions align with those with internal experts. It looks like a good idea. They come to you. It is a good idea. But for that 20% that the data doesn't align with the instinct, how do you handle that?
Yes, I think that's great. I think in general, you mistrust an expert wholesale without reason and at your own peril. If they've been in a space for 10, 20 years, there's data there. They just, it could have just been built up over a constant time of really getting to know their space. Where we think we find the model can deliver, and this is actually something we've noticed from gains, is being able to put all of those problems in together where they can really interplay. Like humans are not always the best at seeing. They can see, like 1 or 2 step interactions. That 3 or 4th degree interaction, maybe not. Where like, hey, me doing this causes a problem someone else is building. That's when we mostly find that delta. So I think having the flexibility to show that emergent, like that's kind of an output, and that's the value of being able to run a holistic network where you're having all the variables can play off each other, is that now you can have the model call that out, and then you can also trace it. Like, hey, when you constrain yourself to this at this building, notice this extra space over here. But as soon as you do this, well, then I can move these things around, and suddenly the space is freed up, and now you're enabling delivery in this market by having store service, extra capacity over in this market. The rest of it, of course, is, again, having that kind of soft constraint, like rather than like any capacity number can be debated on both sides.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Like you can say, oh, of course they can do more because spring 2 years ago, they did twice that.
Yeah. Right.
Like, but like, how many people do you have in that building just dying? Right.
What did they sacrifice to make it happen?
Exactly. Whereas if you can build that as most of the time it does this, clearly it's well within capacity. This should be cheap and efficient.
Yeah.
Clearly we've seen, over time, you can show the cost and you can build that out cost model here. And then it can hit this number, but like you doubled your staffing to hit that.
Right.
Like, is that really like you really keeping all those people on full time? Like what's happening here?
Right.
And so I think building that financial model, like like the dollar is king, dollars makes the most sense, and if it will. And especially in the retail space, I think that's just a really easy common thread to speak the same language.
And finally, do you have any advice for anybody who's looking for, facing the same problems you are, looking for gains? Any advice you can give?
So I think if you don't mind me going a little bit Marcus Aurelius, philosopher, I think the best advice is always know thyself. I think understanding what are your problems,
right?
Like what are you actually trying to solve? How unique is that problem? Like this is a problem that a lot of other retailers, a lot of the supply chains have, or are you a very unique part of the space where a lot of public data isn't a variable? How much data do you have?
Right.
How much talent do you have to model it? So Home Depot, that's trying to be a leader of a retail space that has a very large diverse pool of talent, that is fairly far into its digital transformation, that has tons of data. I think the software only license for, a flexible platform supported by an in-house data science team delivers a ton of value. If you maybe don't have quite that much scale, and if you have a common enough supply chain problem, then I think Gains offers some really great consulting services, and other parts of Home Depot have actually leveraged that and had great results. If you don't know what your talent is, what your data is, I think Gains can sell you a ton of other digital transformation products how to do it for other parts of your supply chain. So
excellent. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us here. And of course. And that wraps up another thrilling episode of Gains On. A big thanks to Aaron Mosher from the Home Depot for taking us inside one of the most diverse supply chain networks in retail and showing how experimentation, sensitivity testing, and flexible modeling guide long-term planning. When a network spans rapid replenishment, direct-to-home fulfillment, reverse logistics, flatbed delivery, and service to both DIY and pro customers, the questions get big fast. By leaning into data science and using Gains to understand where the network shifts under different assumptions, Home Depot can move faster when conditions change. Good inputs create better insights, and those insights help every team make decisions that hold up over time.
If this episode sparked ideas about strengthening your own network design capabilities, head to gainsystems.com to learn more. And if you're enjoying this season of Gains On, be sure to share it with a colleague and subscribe. More insights and transformation stories are on their way. So keep learning, keep optimizing, and remember, in the world of supply chain, we're all in this together. This is Joe Davis signing off from Gains On. Until next time.
Want to stay connected with all things Gains and continue to explore the exhilarating world of supply chain planning and design? Then don't forget to follow Gains on LinkedIn, where you can be part of our growing and vibrant professional community. And for more content, engaging posts, and updates, don't forget to like and subscribe to Gains on YouTube. Trust us, you won't want to miss what we're sharing. If today's podcast episode left you hungry for even more insights, we've got you covered. Every episode of Gains On is accompanied by a detailed blog post for those who wish to dive deeper into the topic. Whether you're looking to expand your knowledge or find that special morsel of information, our blogs are designed with you in mind. Visit gainsystems.com for more. All the links you need can be found in the description below. Thanks once again for tuning into Gains On, and remember, we're here to help you decode the world of supply chains, one episode at a time.